Hey, here we are. It's Thursday morning. QT conversations are the absolute highlight of my week, but this week I am slightly all over the place. And it's really helpful to declare that. It's really helpful to be honest about not being perfect, about vulnerabilities. So I'm going to lead by example this week, Claire, and I'm going to tell you that I am officially all over the place. There's legitimate reasons for that. One of my kids is stretching me way out of my comfort zone with his needs and behavior. Currently, we are applying for an educational healthcare plan for him so that we can get him into a really fantastic child-centered setting that I'm really excited about him being able to go and do work on a farm and bricklaying and history all in the same day. So I really, yeah, I know, right? So the best thing that I felt when I went in there yesterday was, why doesn't everybody get to go to a school like this? So I really was very inspired by this awesome setting that my son has forced us to find for him. And I think that, having my mummy hat firmly on has really informed the conversations in Qualified Tutor recently, and being honest about the fact that I can work in education, talk about children's needs all day, and still have, don't want to say messing up, certainly don't want to swear, but issues at home is honest and healthy, because children are not AI. It's not that we put in the inputs and see what comes out, right? They're unpredictable, organic creations, just like we are. And so there's a certain element of anger and rebellion in my feeling at the moment about the need to comply and the need for everybody to be cookie cutter, automatons and, results of a set of expectations that's informed by accountability, cultures in school, and social media. And I really want to land social media into this conversation, because I think that social media has a lot to answer for when it comes to the mental health needs of the young people. Today, I was speaking with a professional yesterday. I won't give you too much information, but she said it's not easy being a child today. And so we opened up this conversation before I pressed all the buttons to live stream. And I asked the group, what would you like to talk about today? And I think I can tie these things together. Do you remember Can't Cook, Won't Cook, when Ainsley Harriott gave them 5 ingredients and they had to make something from it? So I think I'm a little bit going to do that right now. So Rosanna said, let's talk about parental engagement with families who are specifically, some of the students that we're talking about in your context, Rosanna, are based in China. And so we're talking about different expectations for feedback to the child and to the parents. Mohsin wanted to talk about, brought up the themes of AI and EdTech and how we can stay at the forefront of that to leverage its power for our tutoring. Dee just wants to eat her breakfast in peace. Thank you very much. Claire's got nothing on her mind, but she shows up with curiosity. Hebo and Elizabeth are just starting out in their dialogue with Qualified Tutor, and have this opportunity to explore how we talk, what we talk about, and how it pushes the thinking forward. And Jen is not feeling great today, so she's going to stay quiet and just listen in. Karina, I'm really happy to hear from you and see you when you're ready. So with all of that introduction, I think what we could do is we could talk about what our students need from us, how our students need us to engage with their parents, how our students need us to engage with the wider world, how our students, thanks Karina, how our students need us to engage with EdTech on their behalf, who our students need us to be. So you know that my book, Love Tutoring, Be the Tutor Your Student Needs, this idea of being the person that each individual student needs something different from you. And you have to have the wisdom and the adaptability and the commitment to show up for each of those people. And there's a certain amount of role modeling in all of that. There's role modeling that I do for you by admitting that I feel, there's role modeling that you do for your students by showing up with curiosity, by being patient with them, by empathizing. There's role modeling that you do for their parents when you show them gentler ways to engage with their children. And so let's talk about how you can be that tutor that your student needs on all these different themes. Would that be all right? Okay. Claire, since you have nothing on your mind,
Yeah.
you seem like a really good place to start.
Oh, okay. I think, well, what's come to my mind is just that I love tutoring. I love seeing the results of tutoring and building those relationships and building student confidence that they don't get in a classroom. You know, every student is different. I will be not behave differently, but you learn how to bring them out, I think, and what their needs are because you've got that either small group or one-to-one with them, which I think as a hope at the end makes them a better person and makes them more confident in just their abilities. Because I think they just, you know, when you're in school in a big class, you just sometimes get lost. And it's nice that tutoring sort of brings them out and brings them out of themselves again.
You're
And
reminding me that during COVID, one of the insights was that children weren't talking much. There
mm,
wasn't much back and forth. And we know that in speech and language development, it's the back and forth, it's the turn taking that actually develops the
yeah,
part of the brain that develops speech and language. And when you are, Karina, it's so nice to see you. Thank you. When you are tutoring, certainly one to one, but also ideally in small groups, you have the opportunity to, like you said, bring them out.
yeah.
Do you want to explore that a bit for me, Claire?
Well, just I like to have open questions and I like to quiz them. I'm always like trying to find out what's going on in their head.
Oh,
How are they thinking? How are they processing things? Because everyone processes things differently. And I think as a tutor, you need to find that out. And I've got a whole full range of abilities and backgrounds in my tutoring. So it's kind of like a little challenge.
absolutely right. And I'm really curious. We've spoken a few times about online tutoring and the challenges and the advantages of being in this little box with
Yeah.
each other. And so, really, what you're talking about there is mind reading, right? Sort of getting
Oh yeah.
behind their eyes.
Apparently I'm fully qualified in mind reading and analysing, you know, just being able to mind read all, you know, even my children, you know, I should have known that really, but no. Yeah, being able to mind read is amazing, really.
Mohsin, can you mind read?
Well, sometimes it's even hard for me to figure out what I really want to think, so I would say
Oh
no.
my God, totally. I'm like, there.
That's a different level. We're not there today.
But I think showing that you're
Yeah,
also human as well, and you
Yeah.
also make mistakes and just get frustrated with things. You know, if I
yeah.
can't answer a question or I don't agree with the mark scheme, I'm like, well, why? Why? Come on, let's figure it out. So you got to be yourself with them. I think
I
it's
love it. And I don't agree with the mark scheme because how helpful is that for children to know that you're allowed to disagree?
yes. So I can agree
Mohsin,
with that answer. I
tell
wouldn't
me,
put that.
Mohsin, tell me more about your mind reading skills.
Well, I think Julia, it just again goes back to the same concept we've been talking about, is that especially when you're talking about especially a student, you got to go there to them, you know, and you got to really want to understand what they're thinking about, how they're feeling. And I feel like you got to understand that it's different. Even for me, I mean, even I think when I was 18 or someone who's 18 right now, it's different, despite the fact that the age gap is not that much. But just like you just mentioned, the whole idea that's about social media, it just it's just like a new order. It's literally a new world order that we're in.
The
So
new
I
world
feel
order.
like yeah, I mean, and it's there. You know, we've got to accept that it's not going to happen. It is happening.
Oh,
You know, it
nice.
might have it. Yeah, so that's the whole point. So I think I don't know, that's I mean, I've been very, CSE, just of course I've got my whole biased towards it. But I feel like even when you're talking about mind reading, or you're talking about, getting there, or, you're talking about understanding what a particular child or a group of children they actually need, you got to understand what are they exposed to. I
Ah,
mean, even I've seen that myself happening, that a lot of times we used to have this whole perception that a child turns out to be more or less like their parents, which is true. I'm not saying that's not true, but and we've been hearing debates like, it's the way your personality grows up was nature or nurture. But the truth is that it's not nature and nurture anymore. It's nature, nurture, and algorithms. I
oh
mean,
my
it is a fact.
gosh.
So the point is that you got to have all of that at the back of your mind. I keep on telling everybody, if you don't want to be a programmer, I mean, it's not like studying computer science is about being a programmer anymore. It used to, maybe 20 years back, but I think studying CS it's a science now. It's very psychologically related. So I'm like, do not give an exam. Whenever anybody comes to me, they're like, should we giving our child an opportunity to study CS? I'm like, yes, please do that. I'm not saying just because, of course, I have my biases toward it. I'll always have it. But the reason is they got to understand what's happening, what's going on. So yeah, I mean, if I would mind read, I would use CS to mind read.
Oh
I mean,
my
that's where I would
gosh.
end the thing. Yeah.
You just blew my mind. It's not nature and nurture anymore. It's nature, nurture, and algorithms.
Have you heard about the ban of social media
Tell
for
me.
under 16s?
Go ahead.
I think it was on the news today. The UK are now thinking about banning all social media for under 16s. Australia are doing it.
That's
That's
great. I think they should do it
and
actually.
the impact that would have would be immense. I think it'd be good because I've got 3 kids and they're 16, well, younger 16 in January, but it was completely gone past me. But I mean, what do people think about that and the impact that would have on young people and
Do
children
you,
growing up?
Claire, do you not feel, as somebody who's raised headstrong humans,
Oh.
um, that you can't ban stuff? You can only introduce better stuff.
This is what I'm like. Some people are saying, well, it should be the companies that are banning them and really tightening up the sign-ups.
I mean, it's interesting what happened with cigarettes. Cigarettes
Mm.
have disappeared, and that really was, they really did do the ban thing and the tax thing and the hidden thing and the scary photos thing, and altogether, I guess it did do what it was supposed to do. It's hard to believe that we're bad enough yet, that it's got bad enough.
Mm.
Um,
I just don't know what people think of it, and I don't know how logistically it will happen.
yeah, I
And
mean,
as you're saying in the comment, yeah, kids are too clever. So they
come on. Danielle, I'll find a way to say yes to you later. Thank you. Rosanna has been warned in the chat that I have a difficult question for her.
I was going to say, it makes me sound like I did something bad. Rosanna's been warned.
Rosanna was on. I'm sorry, it's because I had my face on, didn't I? I was talking.
A little bit.
You know what's actually come out in the wash though over the last few years is my head teacher voice. You don't hear that much anymore, but it was very good in its day. So, Rosanna, what I wanted to talk about with you was when you can't read minds. So, because you just mentioned that piece before we opened the meeting about when parents expect something from you that you're not quite sure what it is, and how to go about finding it out, or let's use Hebo's phrase of building bridges.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
build bridges when you can't, when you can't read the minds. Okay, go.
Yeah, I'm going to start just by talking about even more barriers that are in the way with this specific example, which is that it's via an agency. So there's no direct communication with the parents, which is another barrier. And then also the fact there's a language barrier, which is, I think, why they've said my feedback's too academic. I think what they mean is actually they can't understand it. So just to kind of give people some context there for the issues. So in my case, it's just, I actually said yesterday, can you just give me an example of what you want to see? Like, do the parents have an example of feedback they've received maybe from other tutors that is what they're looking for, and then I can try and tailor it to that, really. And luckily I did get one.
What a lovely, humble approach. Good for you.
Yeah, because I had to admit I was in the dark about it. I was like, look, I really don't know what you're asking for, because they've asked for it a couple of times. And I think what I'm giving is the right feedback, because like I say, our focus is academic. If it was more, pastoral or non-academic, like obviously there's an overlap, right? Like oftentimes if students have an academic issues, it's also something maybe to do with other issues too. But because all the parents really care about is that he gets a good grade. At the moment, he's not getting the grades that they want. So that is a little bit kind of
I need to know more about this child. Sorry. How old is he?
he's doing his A-levels, he's in year 13.
Right. So it does feel high stakes.
It is high stakes, but also I'm worried they're using tuition as a crutch, which is another thing I'd quite like to explore, maybe in a separate session. The idea
What does
that
a
actually
crutch mean?
they're becoming too reliant on it at the expense of him not doing independent work, which I don't think you can succeed, especially at A level. GCSE and earlier are a bit different. Maybe you can spoon feed them a bit. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea, but it can get the results. A level, it's a totally different game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying here. I think the whole room does. Yeah.
It's just different, I think, as a student gets older, and there's something about me, I feel a bit uneasy. I mean, at one point they were saying, 3 hour-and-a-half sessions a week, and I'm like, that's excessive, right? As far as I'm concerned anyway. And again, it's trying to sort of bridge the gap between what the agency wants, which I think is as many lessons as possible, what the parents want.
Hold on. That is not a child-centered goal.
No, it's not a child-centered goal at all. But again, I think you've got the whole cultural minefield as well, which is that the parents are very much anxious, and they think the idea is just throw as many sessions as possible at the student, and that will be the thing that gets him to where he wants to go, which is not the case.
Do you have a sense that the agency, fortunately nobody's been named here, that the agency is slightly taking advantage of the vulnerability of the parents?
I think so.
And that you're a sort of tool in the middle of that?
Yeah, and it's been difficult for me to say, look, I don't think this is right, because it's weird, isn't it? You're kind of turning work away, but I don't feel right accepting work. There was other students I had with this particular agency where it was the same. It was the one I talked about a while back, if you remember, where I said the student's just not turning up on time, doesn't have the camera, same agency. And luckily, the agency agreed. They were like, yeah, we should stop sessions. And I was like, thank you, because the parents are wasting their money. I'm wasting my time. I don't feel like I'm affecting any real change.
But the key word here is integrity.
I think so, yeah, and kind of trusting your own gut on it as well, because it's difficult to go back to the parents and be like, you're booking too many sessions, and it does seem a bit, there's not very many other industries, I don't think, where you would actively be turning work away in that sense if they want it, but I think in this case, it's kind of incumbent on you to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so keep going. We're talking about building bridges with these parents, and we're throwing up all the different barriers, but really what we're doing is we're peeling off layers, so keep going.
Yeah, I think it's just about trusting your gut. If you're in because the sessions more because you're in them, right? Even if there's like recordings and stuff, you're physically there and you sort of know where the student's at. And one thing I've struggled with as well, again, this is more of a cultural thing. In certain cultures, there is an expectation that every session there will be feedback, there will be homework, right? And it's like,
sorry, those are two separate things that you've just jammed together for us.
Yeah. So I think the feedback is okay, because it's like, I mean, sometimes I do find that difficult, though, I've got to say, because sometimes we'll work on the same thing for several sessions in a row. Yeah. So I've not got tons to give in the way of different feedback. So I feel a bit like I'm a broken record repeating myself. And
or as if you're sort of exposing yourself as not covering enough ground.
Exactly, which is
something we've spoken about before, that you've got this like pressure to perform.
Yeah, and cover as much as possible, especially for A level, because it's so in depth. Yeah,
we know that word cover, don't we? We like that word cover,
and there's that expectation, and it's managing that. But I'm like, if I'm not going to go at a pace the student can't handle, just because you want them to do everything all at once. So there's that side, and the homework side is more about, if they can't, this is my thoughts, I'd be curious to hear what other people think. If they can barely do the homework they're being given by the school, I don't really think it makes much sense for me to be giving them loads more homework on top of that, personally. I'd rather help them with what the school's given them.
Really nice.
First, and then,
I wonder whether there's a piece of scaffolding that you could provide for them as homework that would sit underneath whatever the schools ask them to do to make it easier for them. I don't quite know what that would be in your context, but that is the only helpful kind of homework to give them.
It's kind of difficult because I haven't seen feedback that the school's given on essays, in particular the coursework, because it's history A level. And I've got to say, it was very scant. I don't think there was much feedback. And obviously there's probably lots of reasons for that. The teachers are busy. There's only so much they can give in the way of feedback.
We're very careful not to bash teachers.
Yeah, of course.
We know that children are not getting what they need.
That's it. So, and that's why I say, like, they're really busy. They've got enough on their plate. So I don't blame the teacher. I don't think that's particularly helpful. So I think that's where I can kind of come in as a supplementary source of support, but not to the point where I'm giving tons more. And the scaffolding approach has been really effective, because I've had to kind of say, look, this is the sentence starter for an essay. This is the kind of phrasing that you should be using.
Nice.
And that's kind of helped with the language barrier, I think, as well. But yeah, it is a challenge in general,
Okay.
in case I hadn't
And
got that
then
across.
I'm going to push you further. Tell me about those parents. How do you communicate with them? Is it an email?
I haven't communicated directly with them. It's all through an agency. So I don't really
You
know.
put notes in for the agency and they pass it on and it comes back to you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'll put feedback on like a Google Doc or something like that, and then send the link to the Google Doc. And then normally the feedback that I get is, oh, okay, thank you, or less academic, please, which is, again, a bit difficult.
Difficult to understand what they really mean. So something came up as you were describing that to me, which is the phrase managing expectations.
Yeah.
Is a phrase that I don't tend to hear from independent tutors. I tend to hear it from agency tutors or agency leaders. Do you have any insights about that? Does that make sense to you?
That's interesting. That's a little bit surprising, actually, because I would think that agencies and agency tutors and independent tutors all equally need to manage expectations. I guess with agencies, there's a couple of, you're dealing with two parties, aren't you? You've got three really. You've got the parents, the child, and the tutor if you're running an agency. But I still think as an independent tutor, you've got the expectations of the child and the parent. So I'm not sure, actually. I would say that's equally applicable.
I'm going to sit on that one for a bit, because I think there's something there about sort of the salesiness that might come through the agency approach. You know, if I took on Dee as a tutor, she wouldn't manage my expectations. She'd build a relationship with me.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
hadn't thought
Which
of
is
it
a
from that side.
completely different mindset.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking of it, I guess, from the point of view of the tutor managing the agency's expectations. I was thinking of it more as like just via the agency to manage the parents' expectations.
It's always the parents' expectations. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Rosanna, well done.
Thank you.
You're a good value, you are. Karina, I told you that I was going to call on you next, and that I'm going to ask you a difficultly open-ended question. Simply, what's coming up for you from this dialogue right now?
So it's actually really interesting. I got some notes up. There's quite a lot of things that were popping up in my mind, and I think because we are independent, and I used to work for an agency, so the dynamic is very different. I feel like we have two clients. So we have the student and the parent. And it's often kind of forgotten that if again, we have to make the parents happy because they're paying for the sessions, but the child, because they're the ones that are going back to their parent, explaining how the session is going for them. So I think the pressure on us is a lot. And in terms of our sessions, because we're really personalized, I think parents are finding it hard to understand that each session will be different. Again, sometimes there might be a lot of homework. Sometimes the way that we run our sessions will be really different in terms of assessments or kind of having laid back sessions, again, depending on how the student is feeling. And there's two examples that I can think of. So first of all, I do have a student, she's doing GCSEs. And I think there's a lot of expectation that we can do quick fixes, but realistically, whatever skills that we do teach the student, they should be able to do that at home. And I think that's where we're really struggling, is how do we ensure that we're supporting the student holistically? And it's gotten to a point where, again, the exams are in summer and the parents are dropping us messages saying, how come, sadly, her grades this recent assessment was honestly terrible, and it's come back on us. Like, what do we do? How do we fix this? We're going to go to the school and have a chat with them, but she's doing so many hours with you.
Hands up who's finding the word fix triggering.
I know.
Right?
I know. And it's just like, she's doing 5 hours a week, different subjects. There's this, again, expectation, and it's like this unwritten kind of code where we must get to a certain point. And I think that's where it is really hard, because we also, I think, apart from academics, we try and look at the students' confidence and how they're truly feeling about learning. Like, the last thing we want to do is be giving them pressure, and then completely, go on the opposite end. And I think having open conversations with parents is honestly so hard. They've come in, they've had a chat with us, and it's the same thing where oh, but if she's having hours with you, why isn't she progressing? But to us, she is progressing. Her confidence is, great. We've had open conversations with her, with a tutor. So we had a quick catch up, and she said, she actually started crying, and she opened up. She's like, I can't believe, I can't get hold of time, and that's why she just couldn't concentrate in her exams. She just felt like time is just flying, and she's not able to grasp, the reality that she is doing her GCSEs in summer. So it's really a different dynamic, because again,
do you know that you're pointing to an ADHD symptom there, Karina?
Yes. I did talk to the parent about this, and she's officially diagnosed, so we picked that up.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and she went through the process. She's been with me for quite a long time, and I picked that up. She's getting support with her school with that. But I think because the parents are there, because we work with children, I think we're more open-minded, and it's not the parents' fault. I think because they're not exposed to this, it might be hard for them to come to terms with that, I guess. But they are trying to understand kind of what's happening. So again, that's just one example, is kind of how can we support a child? I think that's kind of our main aim, because for them, it's like this is their big thing, right, in their life currently. And I think that's, again, something that we forget, is for them, GCSEs, oh my God, doing GCSEs is the biggest thing. And then we, again, as tutors, we're people too, we have things going on too. So it's like a really interesting dynamic that we're trying to,
Absolutely. And you've articulated it so beautifully, all those pushes and pulls. And, we haven't heard the word pressure in this room for a long time. And I think it's a really, really important thing to bring back. Claire, you put in the chat quite a lot of reflection there about pressure on international tutoring and around international tutoring. Would you like to share more about that for us, please?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but I do EPQ projects as well as tutor.
EPQ stands for
extended projects
qualifications. Thank you.
So it's like a little research project. They do typically A-level here, but they've, some students are even a bit younger over there and do it. But even like with the student who's in year 8 that I tutor, that I'm teaching GCSE, because she's like, oh, I do this after school, this after school, this after school, this after school. They pile on so much onto them.
Where's the child based?
China.
Right.
So, but they're all from China, all the EPQs and my little student. I'm just like, I struggle just like doing dinner in the evening, let alone like clubs and everything. But they do, it's that pressure, and then the expectation. And then I had one student last year, he was doing exams. He goes, oh, if I don't get more than 95%, I'm going to be in trouble, sort of thing. And I'm like, the stress that they...
In trouble with whom?
Parents, school, he himself has got himself so hard, he thinks it's a failure to get like less than like 90% in a test. And I'm like, it's the cultural difference. And then
I never know what that really means, though, that 90%, because in the UK, at university, 100% is an 85. So what does 100% mean? Are the tests easier? Are they easier to quantify? I don't really understand what Rosanna, it looks like you've got an answer.
Yeah, no, Claire, I can massively relate to you.
Good.
I've had countless students who've said the exact same thing to me. I've had students say, I need to get this grade rather than I want to. And that always kind of raises alarm bells for me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is it's so competitive in the Chinese culture, really. Students are competing with each other. So when you've got a class where all the students are getting 85%, or most of them, let's say, that is partly why it's so different. Whereas in the UK, it will be a lot more varied in terms of what the grades are. If you're the one student who's getting still a really good grade by any other any other person's metric, it's not good enough. There's a sort of like joke in the Asian market about like the grading system. I don't know if anyone's heard this, but it's like A is acceptable, B is like barely adequate, C is like can't come home because you're bringing shame upon the family. Like there's all these kind of tropes, right, about it. And a lot of agents say it's true. You know, if you don't get beyond a certain grade, and it is normally in the 90s, they don't want to know. So it's sad, but yeah, that's kind of my experience too.
I think it's more culturally for some people.
Go ahead, tell us more.
Yeah, they expect the expectation of their kids are more high than what the kids' ability. It's really sad, but yeah.
You're saying that the parents are expecting more from the children than is fair
Yeah.
to the children that they can actually achieve.
Which is not fair.
Can the
Because
parents
every child
themselves
is
achieve?
different. Yeah.
Where's the pressure coming from? Is it the need to earn money and be sure that their families are going to be secure?
I think because the parent they got the same treatment from their parents as well. So it's ongoing thing.
I heard a really interesting phrase once. It was a tutoring business. I think she was based in Pakistan, and she said, "Our children are our greatest asset."
Yes.
And
Yes.
I find the idea of a child as an asset, I mean, it's very different from the mindset here, where we're a little bit crazy with the being there for our children rather than making demands on them. We're in the UK, we're like on the other end of things. But it does feel like a bit of an extreme tension there. Mohsin, thank you, Karina. Thank you. I'm glad that you understood what I meant there. Mohsin, go for it.
Well, I think it's both the things that we've discussed. There's definitely, a different sort of cultural motivations that are behind it. It's like you're kind of sometimes stuck in a loop. And it happens especially from in our part of the world as well. Remember the other day when we were talking about, the whole idea of having, getting married or not. So it actually literally starts from the day you're born and literally from like until forever. Um, so that's one. And I feel like, but the other thing again is I think the whole pressure just comes because we're trying to put everybody in like the same, the same place. I mean, it's like, see, someone's meant to be an artist, someone's meant to be a mathematician, someone's meant to be a CS guy. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I always explain this with my own experience. If you literally ask me to draw a balloon, I'll probably make the worst one. I've never been into art. I cannot do it. It's just not my thing. I've been good with math automatically. I think it was just automatic. That's it. So I think you got to sit down and accept that. So I've had that's been fulfilling though as well, but I've had some experience like parents coming up and saying that, I mean, we don't really care about the grade, but if you could just help her with her anxiety, if you could just help him be a little more confident. And I'm like, guys, firstly, you got to understand that, they are, let's say, not meant for doing math. Okay, they'll pass. That's okay. That's good enough. And one of them, she actually did so well, and she's such an amazing artist. I mean, she does art so well. So I feel like we got to see it from a different lens. We got to just stop doing it. We got to just stop thinking everybody's going to be an engineer. We got to stop thinking about the fact that everybody's going to be Elon Musk or Zuckerberg. They became who they became because they wanted to be that way. That's I mean, even I mean, I won't go far away. It's like even within my whole family. I mean, we've got like a pretty big extended family. I mean, that's how you guys usually are. But yeah, so everybody is whenever my uncles or anybody is literally comparing any person with me. I mean, I'm like, don't do that. All right, don't do that because I have my bads, which they don't, and I have my goods. So let's sit down and accept that not all of us are, meant to be, the same way. So if you like it, do it. If you don't like it, don't do it. So I think we just got to stop um making this all very consumer centric. I think everything again, I'm just
Nice.
gonna take it again back to social media. So the reason is see, I mean, it's because we make it all become I mean, just like what was just mentioned that you're not a failure. I mean, nobody's a failure. Everybody's just different. That's all.
I'm gonna, with your permission, I'm gonna read you something. It's something that was circulating in insets in schools a few years ago, and Claire's trying to guess what it's gonna be, and I was gonna put it in my book, and actually the the editors said, people have heard this a bit too much recently, so please don't. But I have a feeling that some of you in this room haven't heard this, so I'm going to read it to you. Ready? Okay. And Dee, I'm coming to you after this. Animal school. Once upon a time, the animals had a school. They had to create a curriculum that would satisfy everyone. So they chose 4 subjects: running, climbing, flying, and swimming. All the animals, of course, studied all the subjects. The duck was very good at swimming, better than the teacher, in fact. He received a passing grade in running and flying, but was hopeless in climbing. So they made him drop swimming so that he could practice climbing. After a while, he was only average at swimming, but average is still acceptable, at least in school, and nobody worried about it, except the duck. The eagle was considered a troublemaker. In his climbing class, he beat everybody to the top of the tree, but he had his own way of getting there, and that was against the rules. He always had to stay after school and write, "Cheating is wrong," 500 times. This kept him from soaring, which he loved. But schoolwork came first. The bear flunked because they said he was lazy, especially in winter. His best time was summer, but school wasn't open then. The zebra played hooky a lot because the ponies made fun of his stripes, and this made him very sad. The kangaroo started at the top of the racing class, but became discouraged when told to move swiftly on all 4 legs, the way his classmates did. The fish quit school because he was bored. To him, all 4 subjects were the same. But nobody understood that because they'd never seen a fish. The squirrel got an A in climbing, but his flying teacher made him start from the ground up instead of from the treetop down. His legs got so sore practicing takeoffs that he began getting C's in climbing and D's in running. The bee was the biggest problem of all. So the teacher sent him to Dr. Owl for testing. Dr. Owl said that the bee's wings were too small for flying and that they were in the wrong place. The bee never saw Dr. Owl's report, so he just went ahead and flew anyway. I think I know a bee or two. How about you? The duck is the child who does well in maths and poorly in English, and is given tutoring by the English teacher while his classmates are doing maths. He loses his edge in maths and only does passably well in English. The eagle is the child who is turned into a troublemaker because he has his own style of doing things, which is not doing anything wrong, but he's not conforming, which is perceived as troublemaking, for which he is punished. Who doesn't recognize the bear? The kid who's great in camp, thrives on extracurricular, but really goes flat in the academics. The zebra is the heavy, tall, or short, self-conscious kid whose failure in school few realize is due to the sense of social inadequacy. The kangaroo is the one who, instead of persevering, gives up and becomes that discouraged child whose future disappears because he was not appreciated. The fish is a child who really requires full special education and cannot shine in the regular classroom environment. The squirrel, unlike the duck who manages, becomes a failure. The bee is the child who the school just feels it cannot deal with, yet against all odds, with the backing of his parents, has enough self-motivation to do well, even though everyone thought he couldn't. The child is a unique blend of talents, personality, and ingredients nowhere else to be found. Some children are skilled intellectually, others are blessed emotionally, and many are born with creative ingenuity. Each child possesses his own exclusive collection of gifts. The child does not come with a direction book. Effective parents are always learning, studying, and customizing the instructions for their individual child. Each and every child is as unique as his fingerprints, a sparkling diamond of unparalleled beauty. Don't let your child be a kangaroo. Dee, what are your thoughts?
Wow. I've never been a parent, and I think I talked about this in a QT session earlier in the week about how my role as a tutor has allowed me to explore that parental role in a way that is really safe for me. but is bringing me so much joy and fulfillment. What I wanted to pick up on was the comments about managing expectations and the attitudes and experiences of parents in a particular international market, and some of the comments that were coming across. And as I've explored other areas of the international market other than the one that I'm kind of dipping my toe in, it's those elements that I must admit have put me off, basically. I don't want to have to manage that stuff from those parents, because it would add more stress to my life that I don't think I can. I don't need it. I don't want it, and I'm quite happy in the market that I'm in, and so forth. So it was, and I don't think I'd actually made that connection. That the reason I've not gone there is because of the emotions it's eliciting me when I hear those sorts of comments.
It's really, really powerful. And what's lovely is, again and again, we talk about being intentional about our own tutoring and having the freedom and the power to make choices about how we work, when we work, and with whom we work, which does have its downsides. It does add to the pressure, Karina, you know, like, these are your clients, these are your stakeholders. You need to be really, really serious. And if you're not taking on international work, what are you taking on instead? What are your needs that you need to be covering? Elizabeth, we've not heard from you yet, and the session is nearly over. Is there anything that you wanted to add or share with us about your insights from this conversation?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So just based on what I did, yeah. Okay, lovely. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, just based on just the last few comments, I feel like even if you're not in an international market overtly, depending on the area you work in and the type of students you attract, you will be in an international market in some way. So my parents are Nigerian, but I was born in the UK, and the culture in terms of education and in terms of the type of clients that I'm currently getting is that, you know, we're pushing you towards excellence. We want you to do really well because, oh my gosh, sorry, this is why you haven't heard from me.
It's fine, don't worry, we're fine.
We want you to do really well because maybe the parents are first generation to this country, so they want their children to be in better positions than them. So even though it might not come across in, oh, we need lots of feedback, we need lots of homework, which for me sometimes it does, it still comes in the fact that they have opted for tuition for their child. So yeah, that was just something that I wanted to.
That's really interesting. You know, you're reminding me of a member of ours, Yulia Kosko, who is Ukrainian. And when she first decided to leave teaching, she used to work as I think she used the phrase educational concierge for Russian families moving over here. Wow. And it was very, very much about the culture shift between what the parents expected, which was full-on intensity, and the more British approach, which is more holistic, maybe,
yes,
and possibly a little bit more laid back.
Mm-hmm.
But that laid backness is coming with a little bit of complacency, you could say. And I tell you where I've seen this, and you might want to have a look at this for yourself. There is a Sutton Trust study. So Sutton Trust is a charity that works on providing data for supporting educational disadvantage. So what works best to support children. And they did a study about who is using tutoring in the UK. And you won't be surprised to hear that the more affluent families have a greater tendency to spend money on tutoring. But in the category of the less affluent families, there are more first-generation immigrant families and Black families and Asian families who are using tutoring as opposed to white British. So there is that sense of, I've got to help my children get ahead. I've got to help my children establish themselves in this country. I've got to give them opportunities that I didn't have or that I moved over here to give them. And that role in our, thanks Elizabeth, so that role in our profession becomes really, really interesting. And a huge responsibility, because sometimes you see those families going to tuition centers that might not really have very wonderful tutors in it, might have tutors who have quite a low expectation of themselves, or they might take on the Kumon approach, which I really, really don't love, which is really learning by rote and not really the sort of critical thinking that we're really looking for from our children. So I have my own personal feelings about what tutoring should feel like for the child, and it certainly doesn't feel like hothousing. Who would like to share some closing statements before we wrap up?
That's not my picture in the chat.
What's that?
The picture I put in the chat.
Ooh, where?
It was just before you said your text thing. It's that with all the different animals, and it's everyone is different.
Yes, here it is, Animal School. Well done.
Yeah, and then you went on and spoke and did your thing, and I'm like,
Is that
that's
true?
just it.
There you go. There you go. So am I sharing screen now? I don't know if I am. Am I sharing?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree there. And the elephant wants to go home. Really feel like that elephant. I think it's worth maybe at this point just bringing in the distinction between equity and equality. Yeah, not everybody needs the same step ladder. Some people need higher, some people need lower, depending on how long their legs are. So I have to be honest, this is the conversation I wanted to have about international tutoring, and it's taken us 4 sessions to get here. But I think finally we got really honest about pressures and about different cultural expectations and about bridging gaps and about why we might not want to, and about giving young people opportunities that they may not have, about different pedagogical alignment. Tell you more about what, Dee?
Rosanna just put something in the chat about a friend who worked at Kumon as a teen and is scarred for life.
You know what? We're not going to do that on LinkedIn because I shouldn't have mentioned the brand at all.
Fair.
Because if somebody mentioned qualified tutor in anything but glowing terms, as you well know, I'd go and cry for a week. But basically, you guys are awesome because we're pushing thinking forward and we're doing it in a way that other people can access as well. Thank you so much for your deep, rich, important thinking, and have a great day. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. By Rosanna, by Dee, by Claire, by Karina, by Mohsin, by Elizabeth, by Jenna, and by Hibo. You guys are